When you talk about organizational behavior, we're basically talking about how to manage employee behavior at 3 different levels.
How do you see the future of the field with AI coming up?
So I don't really see AI replacing like all the HR functions. In fact, it's assisting. If you use it as a tool effectively, then it actually helps improve organizational efficiencies.
The old boys club that always organizes the upper ladder of the hierarchy.
But I'm glad that things are changing with, more focus on EDI, with more focus on diversity.
Hello everyone, today is our 5th episode of the series and today we'll be exploring HR and organizational behavior. Our today's guest is Dr. Hina Kalyal. She's an assistant professor at University of Regina at the School of Business. She brings a rare mix of academic, in-depth and real-world organizational experience, having taught HR, organizational behavior, strategic HR planning, recruitment, and change management, while also working in research in the policy roles with the London Police Service. Her work focuses on how people, leadership, and institutions respond to change, which makes her the perfect guest for our conversation on HR, organizational behavior, and the future of work in the age of AI. So firstly, ma'am, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast. I really appreciate it.
Is there anything I missed and you would like to add in your introduction?
No, I think it was a pretty comprehensive introduction. Thank you so much.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey into teaching? And before that, you were working in London, right?
Yes, but I was actually teaching before I came to Canada. My teaching career started back in, after I completed my PhD in 2007, I joined the National University of Sciences and Technology in Pakistan. That's where I'm originally from. And I started my career as an assistant professor, again, in organizational behavior. And I worked with NUST until 2012. From 2007 until 2012, and then I received a Fulbright postdoctoral fellowship to conduct a year-long independent research project in the U.S. So I went to the U.S. in 2012, stayed there until 2013, and while I was in the U.S., I became interested in policing research because I was with George Mason University. I was doing my work with George Mason at the Department of Justice. Law and Justice, and I decided to sort of explore policing research further. So that led to my second PhD in sociology at the University of Western Ontario in Canada. And when I finished that, I joined the London Police Service, worked there for 5 years, and after that, when this opportunity came around at the University of Regina, I felt like I had to go back to my business school roots. And here I am as an assistant professor, once again, back in academia.
So how was your experience of doing 2 PhDs there, and especially in the US, and how do you compare it with Canada?
So I didn't do my PhD in the US. I did my postdoctoral work there. After I finished my first PhD, I did a year-long research project with the Fairfax County Police Department in the US. So that doesn't count as an academic degree. That is independent research work. But I can compare my PhD experience in Pakistan to that PhD experience in Canada. Yeah, so that was quite different because there were 2 very different disciplines. The style of teaching and the courses and everything, they were quite different. So yeah, it was a different experience.
So has the culture, is the study culture same in Canada and Pakistan, or do you find them different? Because Pakistan follows the British education system, and here they follow the American system.
Right. So interesting that you should ask. So I came to Canada as a mature student after receiving most of my education in Pakistan, and as you know that our medium of instruction in Pakistan is English, like most of the higher education is in English. So I didn't have an issue there. But what I found a bit challenging is the way we are taught in Pakistan. Until I was in school or I was doing my university level education, it's mostly based on sort of regurgitation of facts, and whatever you learn, you just regurgitate that, and that makes up for like a good response, just memory-based stuff. So I was never asked for my voice whenever I was writing an exam, but when I wrote my first PhD comprehensive exam in Canada for my PhD in sociology. I mean, the feedback that I got from the professors was that, they wanted to see my voice in my responses, which was quite a big change from what I was accustomed to. So, that was like the major difference that I felt. Was,
here you need to write your own voice, and there it
was just a regurgitation of facts, and that was it. That made for a good answer, but not here. So
I also observed the same thing in Pakistan, or in the British education system in general. They see the keywords. Here they see the keywords, but here they look into more critical thinking.
Right, critical
in the American
thinking
system
is the right word. Yes, that's exactly what they were looking for.
And you were earlier in London, Ontario, right?
Yes.
So moving to Saskatchewan, you moved 6 months ago, right?
I did, yeah.
So how do you differentiate Saskatchewan to Ontario? Are you enjoying here more, or did you enjoy it there more?
That's a very difficult question to answer. So we lived in London, Ontario. We were there for 10 years. So we put down roots. We were very comfortable. My children are still there. Both are boys. I have two boys. They're still in London, Ontario. So that became home. But Regina is lovely as well, except the weather. I hope you don't mind me saying that. I'm not getting used to the weather. Yeah. Besides the weather, everything is great.
Okay. So now we'll go on to the second module of our questionnaire.
Yeah.
So HR, you teach HR in the university in organizational behavior mainly.
Yes.
So how do you define HR in organizational behavior to a layman, maybe a high school student who is interested in pursuing a career in them and wants to understand more of them more in depth?
Okay, so HR basically, we're talking about, some basic functions such as recruitment, selection, compensation, benefits, performance management. That is included in HR. When you talk about organizational behavior, we're basically talking about how to manage employee behavior at 3 different levels. In an organization. We look at the employee as an individual. How do you motivate that employee? How do you assess assess their behaviors or modify their behavior, the behavior of an individual? So it's at 3 different levels. So we have the individual.
Yeah.
Then we move on to teams. How do we manage and modify the behaviors of teams to make sure that we reach the targets that we have for managing organizational effectiveness? And the 3rd level is we look at organizational processes. So how do we manage change in an organization, for example? How do we manage the culture of an organization? How do we ensure that the structure of the organization aligns with its strategic goals? So that's what organizational behavior is about, and it's a little different.
And how do you see the future of the field with AI coming up? Do you think HR jobs could be replaced, or do you think it will still stay?
That's a very interesting question. So from what I know, I'm not an HR expert, but from what I have observed and what I have seen so far, we have had, some of the repetitive basic functions of HR that have been replaced by AI. Say, for example, the applicant tracking systems are that are used for screening applications. So that's a very repetitive, routine sort of a function.
Yeah.
And those types of functions or functions like writing job descriptions. That's also a very routine, repetitive sort of a function. So AI, HR has allowed AI to replace those functions because that leads to greater efficiencies, and then eventually that translates into organizational effectiveness. So, but the higher level functions where, higher level decision making is required, for that we still have that human element that's
involved. Can you elaborate a little bit about the higher level decision making? What's that?
Say, for example, the long-term strategic goals of the organization. When you're making decisions at a strategic level, then you would have that human intervention. But for the very basic, routine, repetitive functions, you would use AI. So I don't really see AI replacing all the HR functions. In fact, it's assisting. If you use it as a tool effectively, then it actually helps, like I said, improve organizational efficiencies, and eventually, like I said, leading to greater organizational effectiveness in the long run.
And in terms of the HR, what fields or professions come under the umbrella of that?
So HR has various functions.
Yeah.
So some of the basic functions are, like I said, recruitment, selection, compensation and benefits, performance management, risk management to make sure that the organization complies with, legislation. So all of that is included. And but then there's like functions such as managing a productive organizational culture, a healthy organizational culture through conflict resolution and all of that. So that also falls under the HR umbrella.
Yesterday we were chatting that 95% of the businesses in Canada are micro businesses or macro businesses. Like they have less than 50 employees and they often don't hire HR professionals. So what's your take on that? And do you think there's a need of HR professionals in the majority of the businesses or no?
Well, it depends on how large the organization is.
Like for the 95%.
Yeah, if it's a very small organization, say less than 15 individuals, I don't think you really would require an HR function, but you could probably outsource it or maybe even use some AI tools to manage some of your basic functions. But if it's a larger organization, then you have to make sure that you get an HR person, a specialist or a generalist to be able to look after those specialized functions, especially in terms of complying with government legislations regarding salaries and benefits and things like health and safety and all of that to manage risk. So that's really important.
There's a World Fact File article that states the specific keyword was there's a old boys club that always organizes the upper ladder of the hierarchy. So as an HR professional, how do you see that things could be improved or HR professionals' opinions could coexist and work there?
Well, that's a problem that exists in many.
And it is the article stated about US, UK, and Canada, and 2-3 other countries too.
And especially professions that are more male-dominated. This sort of a mindset exists there, but I'm glad that things are changing with more focus on EDI, with more focus on diversity. That's actually changing slowly and gradually, even within organizations such as police organizations within US and Canada. Now there's this movement that's an ongoing initiative. It's called 30 Forward in Canada and 30 by 30 in the US, where police organizations are trying to make sure that 30% of their sworn membership is at least by the year 2030 they would have at least 30% female membership in police organizations. So that's one example that I can give you about policing, where things are going to change significantly.
So from policy making, you think that certainly there would be a new, things would be changing a little bit.
Things are changing.
Yeah.
There is a realization that they should have diverse individuals and females and
And as an HR professional, how do you see that? Should one invest their 4 years' time in a bachelor degree in HR or in master's? Should one invest their time or no? And what can they end up learning if they are studying here or at some institution?
Well, well, it depends on every individual, what their interests are. But definitely, if you invest your time in acquiring an HR degree, you will learn in depth about various HR functions. So that will equip you for a position in HR, as well as it helps you develop your soft skills and your ability to deal with people and individuals and conflict and different situations in the organization. So I think it's important. I think it's a good degree to pursue.
And what makes our graduates stand out from the graduates of other universities? Like any things you have observed in our graduates that give them a competitive advantage or help them or support them in getting some skills?
So I've like I said, I've only been here 6 months, and this is just my second term teaching. But what really impressed me was, how much the faculty is investing in developing the students. Say, for example, the case studies, the case competitions that the students attend, and then there's I forget the name of that initiative where they again, the case study competitions that the students are prepared for. I was really pleasantly surprised to see that, how much effort the faculty is putting into developing these students. In fact, even I'm part of a team, the ICBC, the Intercollegiate Business Competition team. So I'm one of the coaches for HR and organizational behavior myself.
So now we'll move on our next segment. Here we have some audience members, Daniel and Grace.
Organizational behavior and psychology tend to have quite a bit of overlap.
Absolutely.
Do you think a student pursuing organizational behavior should take some psychology classes, if possible?
Yeah. So organizational behavior isn't like a standalone discipline. It borrows from a number of disciplines, like anthropology, like sociology, like social psychology, general psychology, and the greatest influence. The field that it borrows from is industrial organizational psychology. So yes, somebody pursuing, organizational behavior or a business degree, it would serve them well if they took some courses in psychology, especially on the IO side, industrial organizational side. Yeah.
Okay. Personality tests like OCEAN are used in organizational behavior. How are those personality tests applied to workplaces?
So that's a really good question. So personality tests are basically they are very valuable during the recruitment process when you are selecting a candidate for a specific position. Say, for example, there are, if you are applying for the position of a police constable, then they would actually test you, and that's a very specialized area of expertise in psychology, personality test development, and because you have to make sure that the tests are valid and reliable and they're administered in a way that you get the correct results. So it's just to make sure that you get the right person for the right job. So yeah, that's why, and that's how they're administered.
And has working remotely, because that's kind of became popular since COVID, has that impacted organizational behavior or HR?
Absolutely. I mean, it's impacted all of us because we had to shift from, I was working with the London Police Service at that time, and we had to, just one day we were told that we had to work from home. So it was a huge adjustment because it's, how do you sort of divide that, make sure that there's this divide between your home and your workspace, because not that I had young children at that time, my children were still older, but for those people who have younger children, how do you make sure that you maintain sort of like a balance between your workplace and your personal life? So I think it was very stressful in terms of organizational behavior. I can definitely tell you that adjustment was quite stressful, but we managed. One thing that has definitely that comes up time and again in organizational behavior literature is how remote teams are being managed, because it's a very difficult task to perform for a manager who's managing a remote team, especially if they're spread over, geographically spread across the world because of the time differences, the cultural differences. So remote work definitely comes with its challenges. It has some conveniences, but challenges definitely. So in order to make a remote team work, you have to make sure that, people trust each other, they get along, and they understand and respect each other's cultural differences and time differences and all that to be able to work more effectively together. I don't know if that was a question you
That's good.
actually asked, but
one final question, and it was, so you worked for the police service.
I'm the police service.
Did you learn anything there that you didn't learn while in school for organizational behavior?
That's interesting. Actually, police organizations are just so different structurally. They are very hierarchical. yes, there were some challenges working for a police organization because of the hierarchy, because I was not really used to that. I went there from a very academic sort of like an environment where we really don't have a hierarchy. So it was a bit of a challenge navigating that. What I did learn was a camaraderie. I mean, that is just unmatched. I was a civilian working for a police organization, but the way they look after you and the way they sort of make you feel like you're a part of a large family, that was something that I probably did not experience in academia as much, because we tend to work in silos when we're in academia. We don't always mix and talk and all of that, but there was this special kind of bond and camaraderie that I experienced. So I felt like, that was something that I had not learned anywhere else or experienced. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
That as an HR professional and as a teacher, what's the ideal personality you think that in a student that this, if a person has XYZ checklist or XYZ personality, he'll do good in HR field?
There's no specific personality type that I can identify for HR. But I can definitely say that this is a role that requires a lot of interaction with other individuals. So you should not be awkward in interacting with people, because that's what it's about. People management, human resource management. That's what the role is about. So definitely someone who's comfortable talking to people, engaging with people, somebody who's emotionally intelligent, although I do have some issues with that term, emotional intelligence, but emotional regulation, kind of almost being politically correct at times, because it is a difficult role. People come to you with a lot of problems. You should be able to handle, resolve conflict.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people have an unconscious bias. You spoke about it in our class too. So what are the strategies as an HR professor, you would recommend any hiring professional to follow so they don't have any unconscious bias or any mindset about certain people?
So unconscious bias is a very difficult bias to tackle because of the fact that it's unconscious. It requires a lot of training. It requires a lot of practice. You have to consciously make yourself aware of your unconscious bias. I don't even know if that makes sense, because I do research on this topic, on unconscious bias, and we need to train ourselves to be able to catch ourselves being, stereotyping or having a bias against someone. Some of the methodologies that, I did deliver a training to 900 of our members at the London Police Service on unconscious bias. I'm not going to say that went super well, because people become really, nobody's happy attending an unconscious bias training, let's call it that. But when we ran some statistical analyses on that training, we found out that the training had actually worked, that it had achieved its target. So people did recognize when they were being, biased towards other individuals. So you require a lot of conscious effort to be able to counter that unconscious bias. It's really interesting when you start unpacking unconscious bias. There's so much that you learn about yourself, and you learn about your responses to, different situations. So, that's
any strategies you'll recommend to unwire the human brain and deal with the unconscious bias? So
these are these strategies come from a lot of empirical research. And the training module that I presented, that was not my work. That was the work of Professor Patricia Devine from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She's the leading expert in unconscious bias, one of the leading experts in the world. And we'd invited her to come to London, Ontario, and she spoke to, our senior management, and then she trained me to deliver that training. So some of the recommendations that Trish Devine makes are, first of all, you need to, you can only expand your mental horizons when you try and do some unbiased research regarding other cultures or other people. Try and, first of all, look at your friends group, your immediate friends group. ask yourself how diverse that is. Is it the same people, like, from the same demographic? Is it, say, for example, I'm originally from Pakistan. Would my immediate friends group, does it comprise only of Pakistani Canadians? If so, then, that's a little bit of a problematic situation, because I should expand that. Actually, we do. My husband and I have a very, very diverse friends group. We intentionally do that. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to get to know other people, on a one-on-one basis. Don't go by hearsay. Say, for example, I'm Muslim. I'm a Pakistani Muslim woman. People have some preconceived notions about Muslims, but I would like people to come up to me and ask questions. Only then they will learn about me as a person, as a faith. I'm not trying to promote my faith, but I'm just trying to say, well, you got to learn. You got to get out of that comfort zone. So that's one way. And then, Trish Devine, she offers some really interesting recommendations. The one movie that she has recommended that everyone watch is Hidden Figures. Has anyone seen that movie? If you haven't, that's your homework. Watch Hidden Figures. It is a beautiful movie, and it's like a true story of 3 Black women who were working for NASA in the 1960s, and they were called human computers. And I think they just, like, all 3 of them died like just a few years ago. And they were brilliant women, and that helps you overcome that stereotype of diverse individuals, people of color, who've actually achieved a lot, in science and technology and all of that. So these are, 2 of the sort of recommendations that Trish Devine makes. Read up, try and find out on your own, and make friends out of, outside of your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone and make friends and get to know people. Sorry, I'm really passionate about this topic, more so than I am about HR, because I do research on this.
Ma'am, I have a question here. You mentioned that, so what I've understood, we humans have some unconscious bias.
Yeah, it's very normal.
And we do, to a certain extent, we have some personal opinions on everything, which is quite normal in humans. Mm-hmm. So don't you think AI systems are better in HR field than humans? Since AI can be prompted to treat every applicant equally and just not look at their names and stuff. So don't you think for HR field, if AI replaces the field as a whole, it's better?
No, to some extent.
To a very high,
to some extent. Yes, that's true to some extent. However, even for screening, and my favorite example to my students is that of Amazon. That Amazon fed 10 years of historical data, of recruitment data, to an AI program, the applicant tracking system or whatever, and the system started eliminating women from the candidate pool because they had historically hired men. So AI is only as good as how you train it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, I'm not very technologically tech savvy, and I always say that I'm technologically challenged, so I don't know as much about AI as you younger men and women would. But this was a really interesting example for me of AI. And I'm not dismissing that as a tool. It's a very, very valuable tool, but still does not replace human judgment. Say maybe you could use it to screen applicants, but the final decision should be, with an HR manager or with an HR team in terms of who they would like to hire.
So before we end our podcast, we have Daniel. He's in Enactus Club. So Daniel, if you could guide our viewers a little bit about Enactus and how it works.
Yeah, sure. Daniel co-lead project at Enactus. We sort of use technology and business to make social impact. And so we have students cut across the business faculty, computer science, engineering, software psychology, and every department. We actually have our applications open right now. So if you're shooting the video, make sure to apply. But if you want to make impact, if you want to change the world, Enactus is the place to be.
Yeah. And I joined their club and they are doing really amazing work. You were chatting about diversity, and these guys are the real example on campus. If you want to make a diverse friend group and meet competitive people, Enactus is the place.
Perfect.
Any one advice you'd like to give to the viewers before we end our podcast?
Well, I obviously, because I teach HR, I would say it's a really great career to be. If you are a people's person, if you want to make a change, I would like to see HR at the decision-making table, at the strategic decision-making table, and I think our new generation could potentially push organizations to accept that, because right now organizations are treating HR as just a side administrative function. But going forward, I think there's good hope for HR. So I think it'll be a good place to be, because you'll be able to change the direction of an organization, turn it around with the HR functions.
Perfect. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.